So good morning, everyone. I am Tiffany Scroggs, and we are here for the Preparing to Bid the Electrical Supply statewide contract by the Department of Enterprise Services. I work for the Procurement Technical Assistant Center, and welcome today. Today is April 25th, 2023. So if you're watching this a couple years later, it might be a bit of out-of-date information. Today's agenda includes a little bit about what PTAC is, and we'll dive into the history of electrical supply contracting at the state. We'll review the opportunity together, and then I'll give you a couple of tools that you can take back to your business and hopefully apply to this bid and future bids going forward. And lastly, we'll end up with some resources. So we will not take longer than an hour. And we appreciate your questions as we go along, or you can save them to the end. We have a small group, so feel free to unmute and interrupt at any time. So PTAC is the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, also known as an Apex Accelerator. We're funded in part by the United States Department of Defense and supported locally by the Washington State Department of Enterprise Services, Green River College, and several other economic development organizations. Our mission is to increase government contracts won by firms in Washington State. We have a focus on serving small, minority, and women veteran-owned businesses. And we have a team, an awesome team, several of them are on the line today, of 15 advisors across the state. And every year we serve over 1,000 businesses who end up winning $300 million in contracts and subcontracts. So we're pretty passionate about the work that we do. It's not a trick. If you haven't worked with your PTAC yet, we highly recommend that you reach out. We won't try to charge you for services later on down the line. Our advising services are always free and always will be offered at no cost to businesses that we work with. This is our team across the state. And you can reach out directly based on, if you're in Washington, based on where you're at, or you can always email info@washingtonptac.org and we'll connect you to the advisor that's best fit for you. All right, let's dive in. So the electrical supply has a long history within Washington State. If you went to the Department of Enterprise Services website and you pulled up the statewide contracts, it was a little bit hard to find the electrical supply historical contract that is now expired. I guess after a certain amount of time, the expired contracts are no longer searchable. So we have a direct link. It's still alive online. It's just difficult to search for. So use this link to find it. And I think Lisa's going to try and throw that in the chat here shortly. But what it shows is that Consolidated Electrical Distributors was on contract for many moons. And they're a business out of Kent, and it has in here their pricing, their copy of their contract, and their contact information. So this contract has expired, and so now the state is trying to rebid it and get new suppliers, new vendors in place. We also went to data.wa.gov, which is where you can see the spend on historical contracts through the state, the statewide master contracts. And on this data, it shows that Consolidated Electrical Distributors got a bulk of the work over, I think it was a 7-year history, maybe 5-year history. I don't know where 3M came in. I honestly think that might be a data error because I didn't see them on the contract, but regardless, $42 million was spent on electrical supplies using the statewide contract. So that gives you a benchmark of how large this contract is. And oh, by the way, we do have the Excel files. I think were already sent to you if you registered for the event. We can send them after if you didn't get them. That has this pivot table in there and the full data set, so you can play around with the full data if you'd like. But this is the top users of the previous contract. So Washington State Department of Transportation, Department of Corrections, followed by a number of smaller jurisdictions. So I was surprised to see Seattle School District. They must have had a major wiring something or other, all the way down to hospitals, higher ed. And then further on down the line, you might see some Multnomah County in Oregon, which is somewhat unique to this contract, is a cooperative purchasing agreement between Washington and Oregon. Anyway, those are the top people that used the contract, top agencies. One thing actually, before I move on about statewide contracts is that they are a mandated source for state agencies. So if Department of Corrections needs new electrical supplies, they have to use the state contract unless they have some sort of need that cannot be satisfied, and then they can justify going off the contract. But for the most part, they have to buy from the vendors that are on the contract. The local jurisdictions have options. They can use the contract, or they can go out on their own and procure it some other way. But it seems like a lot of the local governments are choosing to use statewide contracts for a variety of reasons. So the current opportunity is on what we call WEBs. There is no cost to register in WEBs, but in order to see the full document information and all the amendments, you have to be registered in WEBs. So if you have not done that yet, we highly recommend that you get that done. Doesn't take too long. And if you get stuck, we can help you, or the WEBs customer service people are fantastic and answer their phone when you call. So if you get stuck, give them a call. So this is what it looks like on WEBs as of 3 or 4 days ago. The content, if you went to the pre-bid conference last week, and then you would have met Marilyn on the Zoom. Marilyn First is the contact name for this procurement. And that's the email that goes to her as well as some of her colleagues within Department of Enterprise Services. A couple of things to note on WEBs is you want to make sure that your commodity codes in your registration and your profile match the solicitations that you're interested in bidding on. This allows you to get alerts from the opportunities. So the other thing I wanted to point out here, for if we were able to scroll on this, which we're not, you can see all the vendors that have downloaded. And that's a typo there. It's no longer a 6-page list. Sorry about that. It's a 1-page list that has probably about a dozen or two vendors that are interested in the sense that they've downloaded the documents so that they could view them. That can mean all sorts of things, but it might mean that they're interested in bidding. When you get there, you want to make sure that you're reading all the attachments. And so this is what the attachment chunk looks like as of a couple of days ago. I think it might have been amended with the most recent pre-bid information, but we're going to walk through some of these documents. But usually when I see a long list of documents like this, I typically go to the competitive solicitation, and I go to Exhibit B, the bidder's qualifications, to see if the business is qualified and eligible. And then I might pull open C, which is usually the bid price as it is here. You have to read all the documents and understand what's in all of them. But when you're first glancing at it, competitive solicitation and Exhibit B are probably where you're going to start. And that helps you from not getting overwhelmed with the sheer number of documentation that you download into your computer. So let's talk a little bit about kind of the steps to success to getting on any government contract. First is to read the documents and understand them. And I already mentioned you want to focus in on the solicitation and Exhibit B at first, but all the documents are going to be really important. You're going to then decide whether to bid or not. And some businesses that are new to the marketplace don't slow down and do this step. So we're going to do it today. The third one is to organize your approach. So how are you going to get this bid across the finish line? Department of Enterprise Services gave everyone a lot of time to respond, which is awesome, but there's also a lot of work to do. So, organizing your approach will help reduce the stress level when it comes to the due date. And then lastly, assemble the bid and submit on time. And one thing that we do, the Procurement Technical Assistance Center advisors around the state can do, is help ensure that your assembled bid is responsive to what the government's asking for and is complete. So we can review that bid before you submit, offer a critique, offer insight and guidance, and make sure that just kind of a fresh set of eyes can be really valuable for you prior to you submitting that document. So if you can, pretty please open up the pre-bid checklist that was emailed to you, I think maybe this morning. And it's called a pre-bid checklist. Note, we have a big disclaimer right there that it's not to be considered inclusive of every element of the solicitation, but it's designed to be a starting template that you can use to customize to meet your needs. And note that some of these items are just not applicable to the electrical supply statewide contract. So, but we gave it to you in Word with the idea that this is now your document you can customize to meet your needs. So you can change the font, you can add your logo, and you can certainly add columns or rows depending on what is relevant to your industry and your needs. So if you have it open, great. If not, we'll walk through it together. But this is the interactive portion of the event here today. So if you don't know where the mute button is, find the unmute button. And if anyone could tell me what the solicitation number is for this opportunity, we will type it into that line up top. Anyone want to unmute and tell me? And the PTechers that are on the line can participate as well. But hopefully you've got the solicitation and you've got your pre-bid checklist open. If you don't have the solicitation open, then this game is going to be a little bit harder, but we can walk through it together. Anyone?
The solicitation number is 11121-2.
Fantastic. Thank you. Gold star for Lisa today. Yeah, so we just want to start completing this out. And so on this main section here, we have the deadline to submit the proposal or quote. This is the very first thing I look at after I read the description of the opportunity, because I want to know if there's time to submit. So anyone know the deadline, and where did you find that deadline? So I'll move us along. The deadline is June 13th at midnight. So at 11:59 p.m. to be exact. So it's nice they gave you the time of day that's due. Doesn't seem super relevant now because June 13th seems a mile away, but June 13th will be here before we know it. And where I found that was on solicitation document page 7. The other thing we always look at is the pre-proposal conference dates, and those were held last week. The PowerPoints from those are on the webs as well, so you can kind of review that. It was a very thorough pre-proposal conference date. I've never been to a 2-hour pre-proposal conference, but Marilyn walked through everything that might be of interest and needed. She really has a strong ethic to make sure everyone understands her instructions. So that was also found on page 7. The site visit date, not applicable. That's more of a construction thing typically. The pre-proposal inquiry cutoff date, so we call it Q&A period, is between now and May 30th. So you have a long window there to really dive into these documents and ask questions. On the pre-proposal conference last Friday, one of the bidders was there. I assume he's a bidder, and he asked a really good question that will probably turn into an amendment down the line, because Marilyn wasn't aware that was confusing. So anyway, she was, oh my goodness, thank you so much for pointing that out. And so I assume that will be amendments later on. But anyway, she welcomes questions. She wants the solicitation to be clear and accessible to everybody. The issue date of the solicitation is sometimes relevant if you're searching for it on webs or you're directing other people in your team. Then this last box is the reserved award, also called preferences, also called set-asides, or any other competitive advantage. So if you're a small business or a large business, it's relevant to understand the environment that you're bidding in. So for this particular award, we have 2 reserved awards in each region for small business or veteran-owned business. And that's a state-certified veteran-owned business that may or may not be small. And then there's also 2 non-reserved awards for the full state plus Oregon. And that is all explained in solicitation document. We're going to actually dive into that because it's somewhat complicated. I want to make sure everyone understands the environment that they're bidding in. So for the anticipated awards, this is direct from the slide deck that DES provided in the pre-bid conference. Statewide has up to 2 awards, and this is for all categories and all regions. And this will be awarded to the highest scored bidder. On top of those 2 awards, they're going to award regional awards per region and per category, up to 36 total awards. Again, to the highest scored responsible Washington small or certified veteran-owned business. So a great opportunity to, if you're a small business and you can't regularly compete, and also important for the large businesses to understand that $42 million anticipated contracts may be split among more and more firms. So what's the impact on your on your pricing and your strategy when it comes to managing this contract post-award? Also, I'm not advancing anymore. Hold on one second. Okay, hold on one second. That was weird. My PowerPoint stopped responding. Let's see if we can get it back here. So we've got another slide deck from Marilyn, and hopefully, can you still see my screen?
We can see it, but it's in the view that we see the left panel as well. Do you want to go
Yeah,
to slideshow?
perfect. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and keep it here for right now, just because my PowerPoint crashed a minute ago. So
Got it.
Okay, so she gives the same information in a different format. So the contract on the statewide award is open to all bidders. The contract awards for the regional are limited. So we've already established that. For the statewide awards, they are expected to award to the entire state of Washington, and you can add Oregon if you want. And then same with the regional, it would be awarded by region, and the bidders may bid for any region or multiple regions. So if you want to do all of Western Washington, you would pick the regions in Western Washington, and you may also add on Oregon Region 7. This is also from the pre-bid conference, talking about the categories. So the statewide awards include all categories 1 through 3, or that was an example, and they must bid on all items within all 3 categories to be considered responsive. The regional awards, bidders may bid for any or all contract categories and bid on all items within the contracted category. So you can't pick and choose within the category. Wanted to point that out. So if we go back to our previous checklist, the method of submission is going to be an email. You want to stay under 25 megabytes to reduce the risk that it will not be received by the contracting officer. And that is found on solicitation page 18. The type of solicitation that we're dealing with here, and this is typically, low price. Is a low price technically acceptable? Is there a best value trade-off? Or in other words, how is the government going to evaluate you? And this is important to point out right up front, because it helps you frame whether or not you're going to bid, and it helps you frame your strategy moving forward. So for regional firms, the cost factors equal 600 points. The qualification factors equal 400 points. And there's some other random points involved as well. But essentially, cost is going to be the primary leading factor worth 600 points. So it's going to be a competitive environment in terms of your pricing. And we can kind of skip away from the pre-bid checklist. I wanted to just give you a flavor of how to fill that out and how to move forward with that if it was something that you thought was useful for your business. You now have the Word document. You can keep on tucking down those pages and each item as you dig through the solicitation, as you dig through the all the exhibits. Questions on the pre-bid checklist before we move on? Okay. So let's turn our attention to Exhibit B. Marilyn did a nice job in the pre-bid talking about these instructions. The tip is to follow them exactly. And so I wanted to just make sure that we walk through what exactly this says. So for questions 1 through 7, you're going to write a whole number only. If that item is $9.95, you are out of compliance, your bid can get rejected. So we want to make sure you're using whole numbers only. The number 3 there, provide detailed answers as directed by the question. And so you'll provide detailed answers. And one thing she pointed out is that there is no page limit. You can go on and on, providing hopefully in an eloquent fashion all the details that relate to that question. It says less detailed responses may receive lower scoring than those that clearly and completely respond to the question. And this is where running those answers by a PTAC advisor might be helpful. We don't know much about electrical supply, I don't think, at least I don't on my team. But what we can do is take that question and read your draft response and see if we find it to be clearly and completely documented, and maybe provide some details or tips back to you to see if maybe some of that fluffy language that doesn't really mean anything could get replaced by language that matters to the contracting officer that tells the story a little bit more clearly. I think that was it. Oh, no, number 4 is actually really important. She indicates here that bidders are not to include any company identifying information in the response so that the evaluation team can conduct an anonymous evaluation. And this was somewhat interesting. The state doesn't always use this approach, but we've had other agencies use it on a regular basis because they found that it did remove a lot of bias from the evaluation team. The incumbent on this contract has had a long-term relationship with a lot of the people that are probably going to be evaluating this new set of bidders. So they want to try and keep it as fair as possible and compare bidders against bidders without any of the inherent biases that come with the incumbent in the room. So no identifying information in your section here, and if there is, she might remove it. If there's too much for her to remove, I suspect that she has the right to just ignore this section of your bid, which would be problematic for your score. Or she might have time to kick it back to you and say, try again. But it's probably best for you to just write your evaluation to where there's no mention of your company. And that could look a lot of different things, could say, we launched in Woodinville, Washington in the year 1978, and our founder, Bill, blah, 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 blah. Like all, I don't know if that's one of the questions is your history, but that's a really clear identifier. We could probably Google that information and pop up the company that is being referenced. So just be clear on that. And you want to go ahead and remove any of those if information that will keep you anonymous. Okay, so that's Exhibit B. That's all I wanted to highlight there. Let's move on to the bid or no bid. And yes, Tammy, I'd be happy to provide a copy of the slides. I think they might have already been emailed if you're registered. If not, we can pop them over to you right after this. Yep. So the bid or no bid, we want to conduct an analysis based on your company's goals, your likelihood of success, and what you're good at. And the reason we always recommend a bid or no bid is it forces you to slow down and read the solicitation, because it's tempted to get really excited and just dive into writing and completing Exhibit B, or starting to contact manufacturers for pricing. What we know is that small businesses don't have the luxury of wasting time bidding everything. So we want to create that space to think about why you want this work, how you'll bid, and what it will look like in a post-award environment. So this is my bid or no bid self-assessment. Again, we've submitted it to you in a document that allows you to make it your own. We just want you to have a document that works for your company and take more than a minute to kind of just analyze several factors that may impact your ability to bid successfully and perform successfully. So the first line there, is it within the scope of what your company can do? So you might rate it a 5 if it is, or a 1 if it's not. And then you tally up all these points as you go down the line, and then you can kind of see your score. So if it was exactly perfectly aligned for everything that you do, you would get 5s all the way down the line, and you'd know you're ready to bid. If it wasn't aligned with your goals and your proficiencies, then you might be lower on that rank, and then you have to decide what to do with that score. Talk about it with your team, think about it through different hats of your company. So if you have different hats within your company, and kind of move forward from there. So this is just a very basic overview of what a bid, no bid would look like. But one thing that we want to maybe think about too is adding what the 5 means, what the 1 means. So if the scope, if the work is within the scope of what you could do, maybe a 5 means that it's 100% in line with your strategic goals. A 1 would mean it's never something you've done before and it's not in line with your long-term goals, right? How likely is this contract to be awarded and utilized? Like in general, not just to you, but in general. We have a lot of governments that have done this to bidders before, where they issue a long-term contract or an on-call contract, and then their customer never uses it. The agency doesn't use it. What a waste of time for everybody, right? So a statewide master contract is probably on the higher end of this. It's probably a 5 or a 4 because of the history. You know the history. It's not a brand new contract. You've seen the data that shows who's using this contract. And there is the factor that instead of just one successful bidder on this, they might have up to 36. So they're going to dilute that potential spend among 36 vendors. So that might also play into the likelihood that this contract will be utilized. The third question there, do I have the cash flow to perform? This might mean a lot of things to different people. So understanding that they give you a sample contract at the end of this in one of the exhibits. It's a sample contract and it has the payment terms in there. And so you want to read those and know whether or not you can handle that. You know, if you can still perform effectively without with the cash flow that's needed. So that a 5 might be that, yes, cash flow is never an issue for my firm. Or it might be a number 3 that like, no, I don't have the cash flow now, but I can get it. I have a good relationship with my banker or manufacturer or whatever. Or number 1, no chance. My manufacturer wants me to prepay for everything and I don't have any cash in the bank. So that's a factor as to whether or not you bid. Any questions on bid or no bid? All righty. Cruising right along, we'll go into kind of a review of what we talked about. So read all the documents, understand the exhibits, and compare that to a checklist. And that helps you from keeping lost as well while you're going through all those documents and exhibits. Then decide whether or not you're going to bid. That is a choice. After that, you want to organize your approach. And we didn't go into that a whole lot today, but meeting with a PTAC advisor is a good, at any one of these stages, but organizing your approach and brainstorming how you're going to be successful in preparing the opportunity. And you are all one step ahead of your competition because you're here today and you have a long lead time to get it together, which I understand this is kind of a complicated process. So they gave you a lot of time for a reason. And then lastly, of course, you assemble and submit on time. So Washington PTAC is here for you. There's several advisors around the state. We also do a number of events that we welcome you to attend if they're relevant to what your needs are. You can find them all at our washingtonptac.org/calendar link. We have just a whole list. So I don't want to maybe potentially the Meet the Agencies is going to be really good. I want to foot stomp that one. There's always the Government Contracting 101. If what I said today was a little overwhelming, you want to kind of slow it down, you can go to that one. And then we have a lot of federal contracting related workshops as well. So that Steps to Leading to a Federal Contract on May 10th is going to be phenomenal. It's by a former federal contracting officer with over 30 years of government contracting experience. He's a fantastic advisor. So feel free to peruse our calendar and register for events and workshops. That May 24th one tends to fill up. We do limit the capacity on that one. So I don't think it's full right now, but May 24th might be one to take a look at if business to business marketing and business to government marketing is in your future. This is my direct contact information. You can email me at programmanager@washingtonptac.org. You can visit our website. And if you're not in Washington State, there is somebody just like me in another state. So you can reach out to them using the Association of PTAC link on the slide deck there. And if you're not part of our newsletter, we welcome you to subscribe. We have 2 newsletters a month is what we try to cap it at so we don't overwhelm you. But we provide a lot of information for you in your inbox. With that, I will stop sharing and take questions.
Thank you, Tiffany, for that presentation. I don't have any in chat. I did check on the elevator pitch class and it is full. It is
Oh, no,
at
I'm
20.
so sorry.
But what I advise anyone to do is get on the wait list, because we do mark it, because we do cut it off at 20. We make sure that we have 20. So put yourself on the wait list, and you will be marketed to the next time it comes around as well. So you may get in, but you may be invited to the next one. That's a
That
tip.
filled up fast. We should do those more often for
I
sure.
think so. I agree.
So Tammy and Jen, do you, either of you have any questions? Happy to help.
All right. Hi there, Fanny. My questions is that we can open this solicitation in the webs. However, how can we respond to that bid if we will say no bid? Like, is it through email, or is there a way we can attach it in the webs, or we can, to make it directly?
No, the state has not invested in an e-procurement system that allows for that. So everything is done old school way. So at least you don't
Email.
have to drive it to Olympia anymore, but you do have to email it to the inbox that's specified in those instructions, which is in the solicitation doc.
I see. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, same as I remember last year, it's like around October, we submitted our code to the webs, and yeah, we are having hard time on how to attach it. So we directly email to it. So it's the same as saying no bid, right? Direct email only when we communicate.
Yeah, yeah. If you're
Mhm.
choosing not to, is that what you're saying? If you choose not to bid?
Yeah, it's either we want to bid, or we want to submit our code.
Yeah, if you choose not to bid, you don't owe anyone any communication on that. That's just, you just move off into the sunset at that point. If you choose to bid, you would need to submit all the documents required in the solicitation through that email address.
I see. All right, thank you so much for that.
You're very welcome.
Tammy, do you have any questions?
She typed in the chat, no questions.
Okay, very
Okay,
good.
thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. Wonderful. Well, it was delightful to have everyone on the line today. We do encourage you to reach out to us. Let us see if we can assist you in your efforts to grow government contracts, not just for this solicitation, but if there was other opportunities that your firm wanted to go after, put us to work. Let us see if we can help you. We just want to see you succeed. So with that, we'll go ahead and close the webinar. I thank everybody for attending.
Thank you so much.
Hey, Maria. Thank you, Jen.